The Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Nodulator Pro, and Cruiser Max Vibrance Beans.
Bernard Tobin here on the Soybean School, catching up with James Dyck, OMAFRA engineer. Sir, how's it going?
Pretty well, Bernard.
Awesome. Now, you and I always seem to sort of get together this time of year because people want to ask you questions about drying crop, and this year is no different. It's been a challenging year, to say the least.
That's absolutely right, particularly for soybeans. Now, everyone knows about the dawn issues we've been having in corn, but there's a lot of soybeans from our wet fall that has remained in the field, and especially the IP beans, where farmers are looking at a $3, even a $5 premium per bushel. They really want to get those beans off, but they really have nothing to manage that moisture. If they're 17%, a lot of guys are saying, what can I do?
Yeah, and one of the, solutions you're providing is, hey, you can dry those beans with natural air.
That's absolutely right. You may not think of it on a chilly day like this, but Ontario conditions are actually usually pretty good for air drying your beans. All you need is a bin with a sizable enough fan on it. And as long as your beans aren't really wet, like I'm going to say 18% or less, you can do a good job drying them just in a bin with a fan.
Now, airflow, vents, how do you set up that bin?
So you want to make sure your fan is big enough. And what I mean is you want to be targeting probably 2 cubic feet of air or CFM for every bushel of grain you have in that bin. So, 10,000 bushel bin, 20,000 CFM. At minimum, you want at least 1 CFM, and so that means make sure your fan's big enough. Call your fan manufacturer. They've got the data. If you're not sure, rule of thumb, 1 horsepower equals 1,000 CFM. And if you don't have enough fan, you can always put less grain in the bin, or you can put a second fan on your bin too. Some guys have done that.
Now, important to have that grain level in the bin?
Absolutely level, but first you want to core it. So a lot of fines will collect in the center. That really impacts the airflow through the grain. So take a load or two out until you get a nice inverted cone, maybe a quarter of the bin diameter. You've gotten most of the fines out at that point, and then level the bin, nice level bin. Otherwise you've got uneven airflow, you're going to get uneven drying. It's going to take way longer in the deeper areas.
Now, how much of a concern is the weather, especially when it comes to humidity?
Humidity is the key factor here, and so a day like this, it's pretty cold. I didn't actually check the humidity, but we're probably sitting around 70 or 80%. Anytime you're 70% or less, you can do a good job drying. Your moisture in those beans is going to get to where you want it to be. If you're higher than that in humidity, you either should stop running your fan, because beans do take on moisture fairly easily, or you can add a little bit of extra heat, whether through a propane heater or electric heater, something you can put in front of your fan just to add a little bit of heat, dry out that air just a little bit, enough to get that humidity down, and then you're away to the races.
Now, a lot of guys will ask, when should I be running those fans?
So run them anytime the humidity is below 70%, or anytime you've got heat on that air to dry it out. Doesn't take much. We're not talking about a lot of heat here. It's like 5 to 10 degrees. No different than if the day were to warm up on you in the afternoon. It's not the same as drying it in a heated dryer.
Now, the million-dollar question is, how long is it going to take?
So that's the tricky one, and it depends a lot on weather conditions, temperature, things like that. But expect it to take 2, 3, 4 weeks. Yeah, it sounds like a long time, but talk to your buyer. See when they actually want those beans. If they don't want them till January, February, March, you got a lot of time in there to dry those beans down, and a few hours at a time, running that fan when conditions are good, you will get them dry. It'll just take time.
Great. And hey, great article by James on fieldcropnews.com. Lots more detail. Check it out. Hey, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks very much, Bernard.
Yep.